Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. I love this stuff, man. I really do. And so, one of the things that all of my listeners know that is my favorite, I deem it my favorite part of the show until one of the guests says some nuggets that will floor me. Um, and that is to welcome the guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things I personally deem very expensive. Time, what a precious commodity. Most of us don't understand how to utilize it, how to partner with it, if you will, how to be honorable to it, and we misuse it. And I want to thank Noel for coming and sharing some of that. The other is his journey. The journey housed who we were, created us to who we are today. And so we want to thank you for coming and sharing both. Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to chatting with you.
It's a pleasure, man. Tell the folks, and I've been telling them this for a long time, that we serve others. So how do you serve, if you will?
Yeah, I think the way I serve is just sharing the experience and stuff that I went through. I grew up in India, born and raised there, and but I never felt like I fit in. I never felt like I belonged. So I wanted to start. I had a vision of myself in my mind, but I wasn't like living in that. So I decided that I have to go out on an adventure. I have to go out on my own, just try to get out of the social conditioning and try to build who I really think I am. So I ended up leaving India, moved to London in 2010, lived there for about 5 years, did my college, and then I came over to New York. So the way I sort of just sharing all that journey, because that
Mhm.
was not an easy journey, coming with like maybe $1,000 in my pocket to New
Yeah.
York, and then having not knowing anybody here, no friends, no family, and then really starting a business, employing people. 10 people work for me right now, and I'm serving them because there was a time where I couldn't pay them.
Yeah.
There was a time where I was running out of money. I couldn't pay the salaries, but then rather than you know not paying them or delaying it, I did whatever I had to do. If I had to drive an Uber, I would drive an Uber to make sure my employees got paid. And then sharing that work ethic with the people that I cross paths with now in the financial markets, bringing integrity to the financial markets is the way I'm serving people right now, teaching them how to, be self-reliant,
Yeah.
and more so because once you can be self-reliant, you can also take care of others. It's almost like you have to put on your own oxygen mask first
Yeah.
before you can assist others. So that's one of the ways I help them is by letting them take control of their financial future. Because once that is set, now you have time to focus on a lot of other things.
Tell them your name.
My name is Anmol Singh, and I trade stocks for a living. I author of Prepping for Success.
I love your beginnings, if you will, and India being one of the oldest civilizations around, and so they have much wisdom within that culture. I love reading the Vedas and all of the different sources of wisdom that they have at their disposal. And so you and I are going to have a good time. So one of the things that we like talking about here is we go back usually to that first space by which we stay for a couple of years, and we call that space family. And we grew up within this family, and we have mom and dad from whatever trauma they were uh, given birth to. They now are going to deposit data, if you will, into you and I. And based on those deposits, we are going to perceive the world a certain ways. Invite us to your family. What was that unit like as a young man growing up in that family?
Yeah, definitely. So didn't really see my dad that much growing up. He was really hardworking man. We came from very humble beginnings, but he also was very driven, like I am. So maybe I get that from him. He was very driven to change the trajectory of where the family was headed, from selling tea,
Yeah.
growing up, to finally he wanted to become something great. So I rarely saw him growing up. Maybe like 10 days in a year is where he would come home.
Wow.
For the most part, he would be traveling, in different countries in Europe and Russia and Soviet Union, because he would get machinery from there.
Hmm.
We would bring it back to India, export it, fix it, repair it, and then sell it to America or somewhere else. So that was the business he got into, and he became really, really successful. But in that pursuit of that, I didn't really have that much connection with him growing up. But now we make a conscious effort because of all of those things that, he makes a conscious effort now. I make a conscious effort now to try to get to know each other on a different level. But one thing I did always learn from him is I never took it the wrong way. I never took it like, oh, my dad's not there, father's not there. Never took it like that. I always look at that. Wow, anytime he comes home, he comes with a lot of gifts.
Yeah.
Everybody's excited to see him,
Yeah.
right? He's always providing for the family. I have everything I needed
Yeah.
for school, uniforms, books, everything I needed, I had. So he provided. So he did what he had to do. And that is one thing I took. And it was sort of like a programming that kind of went in me
Yeah. Yeah.
that now I have to do
Mhm.
whatever I had to do. And it's funny enough, I'm sort of recreating that same story because now I moved from India. I'm traveling. I'm all over the world. So it's funny how things work out. But I think I took that away from him is the work ethic. And my mom was, she was at home most of the time. She
Yeah.
would always be there. And yeah, I had a very typical childhood. I was very quiet. I was very shy.
Mhm.
Very introverted. Still, I would still think I am.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah, that is. We always pick up something. It's amazing when we look back through conversations and so forth, when we identify something that we extract from that relationship, our parents and so forth. And I love your uh, how you look at that, because I've interviewed so many people, and a lot of them take the fact that the dad is not there, and um, uh, they see it as a something detrimental, if you will. But here you are, looked at it, and you said it never really, took it as a detrimental situation. You looked at it as, hey, when he comes, I'm getting loaded, everything is being provided, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's a great outlook, if you will, for a young child, a young man, to
Mm.
have about his dad, that is seeking and doing the responsible thing, as we are all told and educated that we must do as men. And anything less than we are, we're a failure. We kind of have a tendency of internalizing that and say we are a failure, and then all hell breaks loose when we do that. So here you are, you gain tremendous insight from your dad, and you are moving through life now. You are in your teens and you're hanging out with your friends and so forth. What were you thinking about and doing as far as recollection? What was your days like in your interaction with family and friends in your school?
Yeah, so I was always the quiet one. I was always the quiet one. I was very introverted, and I like to keep to myself. I
Yeah.
would always be, never really fit in because a lot of people would want to go out or do this or do that, or even, even in college, like go out and party. I would much rather, research something,
Mm.
research a topic or dive into a topic or read a book about it. So I was always that kind of a guy, on my computer. I really took to technology very early on.
Yeah.
And once I got I got a computer, and I was all in. I mean, as a 13, 14-year old, I would be researching like on, neurolinguistics. I would be researching on different topics. I was like 15, 16-year old. So I was always into that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that came from me being really shy and not fitting in. So I felt like I had to work on myself, I had to develop myself. I think that's partly where a lot of that came from. Is I felt like I needed to. There's something I needed to learn,
Yeah.
and maybe unconsciously I thought, okay, maybe if my father was there, maybe he would have taught me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But since nobody was there, rather than whining about it, I have to like learn. I
Hmm.
have to get better. I have to develop skills, how to talk to people, how to communicate. I think all of those skills were learned skills for me. They didn't come naturally to me.
Yeah. That is, again, I just like your outlook as to life, and how you're pursuing things. Again, like I said, I've interviewed many people that would take all of that and they went the other side, where they would be more partying, if you will, and
Mhm.
creating all kinds of trauma on their way out, heading towards adulthood. So here you are, you were studying, you got into um, the industry, if you will, of personal development, and you're looking at NLP and all of these different things. what were you observing as you were studying and pulling data as a 13, 14-year-old young man?
Yeah, I think things started to make a little bit sense.
Yeah,
I was very curious about the mind and how the mind works. And even some of the thoughts that I would have as a child, sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm not fitting in. What are people talking about me behind
yeah,
my back? I always was a little insecure. And to me, learning more about the mind, how the mind works, gave me a lot of comfort.
yeah,
Number one, made me feel better, right, in the moment. And number two, I started to realize and observe people from like a third person almost, and be able to really get where they're coming from. I think that's something that I personally feel like I was gifted with, just to talk to somebody and kind of just get it,
yeah,
like where they're coming from, what's causing that. And I was very observant, and even now, like my family would usually, if there's anything going on, they would come to me for asking questions, or hey, what do you think about it, or could you talk to her about this, could you
yeah.
talk to him about it, because I kind of became the mediator, and I learned how to be objective,
Hmm.
right? Just be objective, listening to both sides, not trying to just add my own thing,
Yeah,
but listening and observing and seeing where they're coming from to come up with the natural conclusion. And usually I would be able to get, two parties that have a very different
yeah.
opinion, still manage at the end of the conversation to come together and say, okay, this is what's common. And I think those are some of the things that I gathered very early on. And I just got fascinated by it. And now I coach traders and investors, but on integrity,
Yeah,
on mindset, on how they can control themselves so that they can really be the best version of themselves, and not the stereotype that people think about finance. Oh, so I think try to get away from that and getting back to the center.
yeah. Ethics is really important in along with your mindset, but as far as an individual peace within oneself. When you practice ethics and so forth, you have peace within oneself. So here you are, this young man, you are a facilitator, if you will, of the information that you've learned. You've learned how to see the differences between different people's belief and perception of a situation. As you're moving towards your college days and years and so forth, why did you pick the field that you settled on? And how did you manage yourself within there once you got there?
Yeah, it was almost like it fell into my lap. I had no idea because I was horrible at math growing up in school.
Yeah.
So numbers or finance was the last thing I thought I would ever do.
Hmm.
And I actually wanted to get a job. I was in college, came the time to apply for internships and jobs. I wanted to get a job. And the reason I wanted to get a job was because I saw sometimes my father how stressed he used to be.
Yeah.
Because in business, it's about what you make.
Yeah.
Some days, some months you make more, some months you don't make anything, some months you make less. So I saw that little stress anytime he would come home, and I observed that, for sitting from afar. I
Hmm.
would observe how stressed he would get, and sometimes he's really happy. And I saw that roller coaster of emotions, and
Yeah.
I didn't really want to get into business at all. So I wanted to get a job. I applied everywhere, from the biggest companies to the smallest startups.
Yeah.
Just couldn't get anywhere. I got no callbacks, didn't get a job. And that's kind of when it dawned on me that nobody's going to give me a job. Nobody's going to coming to save me. I have to figure something out on my own.
Yeah.
And that's when, as a typical introvert would go on his computer, research what can I do
Yeah.
online, and then trading comes in. Oh, you can do stock market from online from
Yeah.
computers. And I just started taking a lot of courses, reading a lot of books about it, attending seminars with it. Finally, joining a firm as an intern,
Hmm.
where I was trading for them,
Yeah.
and but from online. From I was still in my dorm room trading for a
Yeah.
firm in New York. So that's where it's really started, and I just took to it,
Yeah.
and I just really got it. I really was fascinated by it, curious about the markets,
Hmm.
and I think that curiosity led me to this career that I've been on now for 14 years.
Congratulations on that. I always tell people find your passion and be passionate about it. There's nothing like it. It's not work. It's a lot of fun. And I did sales for many years, and I remember when I first got into it, my manager at the time, he says, "You're only as good as your last month." So don't try to get a big head. He says, "You're only as good as your last
Yeah.
month. You got to worry about the next month coming up." So there is a degree of stress that is within that, built in within that industry, when you have to be concerned about the following month. And yeah, I've seen it. Uh, I've seen people have some of these struggles with it, and I've seen relationships broken as a result. All of this different thing because of that particular stress level. So here you are. You got into your studies. You found where you wanted to be, if you will. You arrived when you got there. As you're doing all of this stuff and seeing you and that the fact that you're having this good time, you're enjoying yourself, you see, what, as you begin to focus on that, what did you want from it? You're in it, it's doing good. And what did you started to envision from that space as you were in your dorm room, as you says, on your computer, making money?
Yeah, so one of the things I wrote about in my book, the chapter is called Silver Lining, where you can only connect the dots looking back. So in that moment, I remember when I was not able to get a job, and I'm looking at all my friends in my dorm getting internships, getting great jobs, high-paying jobs, and I'm just on my computer still not doing anything.
Yeah,
And I was really down on myself, really feeling bad about it. But then looking back, I'm like, that was the best thing ever. I've never had a job
yeah,
ever.
yeah,
I started that in college, and I've always done this in the financial markets by myself, working for myself, and never having a job. So looking back, I'm like, wow, that was actually the best thing.
yeah.
What I thought in the moment was the worst thing, not able to get anywhere. Now that being the best thing ever. So I think that was one of the things observing, from afar.
Yeah.
But then also it's all about like that journey. You learn so much about yourself when you start working for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no accountability.
Yeah,
There's no boss telling you what to do. There's no supervisor telling you what to do, right? When we grow up, our parents tell us what to do. Then we go to a school. Our teachers tell us what to do. We go to a college. Our professors tell us what to do. Then we get a job. Our boss tells us what to do.
yeah,
But as an entrepreneur or somebody working for yourself, nobody's going to tell you what to do.
yeah,
You have to be self-reliant and to figure out what you need to do and be disciplined enough to carry that vision forward. So I think that accountability and that discipline and that is all the stuff that I learned, and I wouldn't have learned without actual being involved in the pits every single day. So I think those are some of the things that I gathered from my experience.
How did you come out? Because when you're looking at your friends, and that can be a heavy burden, if you will, an emotional trauma in a way where you're looking at your friends, and did you allow it to become bigger than what it was? Or how did you handle it? How did you tame it, if you will? Because, I mean, you're hanging out watching your boys. They're all, quote unquote, moving on, doing their thing.
Mhm.
And you're here in your room doing stuff. And I know you said in retrospect it was the best thing, but at that time, with that sense that what's wrong, what's going on, how did you get out of that?
Yeah, so in the beginning, definitely I was very, I was playing the victim card,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm in London, and maybe because I'm Indian, maybe because I'm this.
Yeah,
You start giving that because I'm looking at my friends, I'm like, they're able to get the jobs, and I'm pretty sure I'm, equally as good as them. So, but I kind of played the victim card for a little
yeah,
bit, but then I'm like, this is not going to help me.
yeah,
It's not going to help me. It's not serving me. And no, it's not true because there's other people, from the same
yeah,
background. They've got it. So I need to work on myself. I need to work on where I can add value. And then also, I'm very spiritual. So looking
yeah.
back, I'm like, maybe it's not meant for me. Maybe this is not my path,
Hmm.
and I'm just going to accept it. God has His own way. The universe has His own vision for me,
Yeah,
and it might not be what I want, right? It might not be when I want it,
yeah,
but it's going to happen in the right time, not my time. So I think realizing that gave me the strength to just keep learning, keep pushing, and just seeing where this takes me. Almost like a very curious journey.
yeah,
Let's just see where it takes me. Let's just start on this journey and let's see where this goes and figure pieces out along the way rather than living in the future.
yeah, yeah.
Right, living in the present was kind of the biggest thing I got from it.
I think it is one of the most important thing is living in the present, because if you're living in the present, you'll be able to take care of your future. And a lot of people are just focused on the aspect of the future and not really, they're missing the details
Hmm.
that they need to make sure that they have in place. Now you're working for yourself. How did you develop your, if you will, your discipline? Because it takes a certain degree of discipline, even though you have that entrepreneurial spirit. It comes with discipline, responsibility, all those other offshoots that are part of it. How did you manage it? How did you understand that you needed to do this? And what tools did you bring into your life to help you to become a disciplined individual?
Yeah, I think the first thing was like looking at people who already had the results that I wanted
Yeah,
and seeing how they live their life and looking at how disciplined they are and trying to, you know, like as I said, from neurolinguistic programming, you're modeling
yeah,
yourself out of somebody, right? So I looked at people who already had the results that I wanted, that were living the life that I wanted, and I try to model myself after them and say, okay, what are they doing better, right? What are they doing that's getting them the results? And the common theme I noticed was being objective and being disciplined.
hmm,
And I had a lot of knocks. So there was plenty of times I thought about quitting. You know, I was losing money my first year
yeah,
when I was got into the financial markets, losing money, thought about quitting, and it was the same mistake I was making over and over.
yeah,
Greed, fear,
yeah,
right? Your emotions
yeah,
take over, especially in the stock market. I mean, they if in real time millions of dollars are being risked,
yeah,
fear and greed will take over.
hmm,
And then you start thinking from your primal fight or flight brain. And I think learning that and just being like, okay, let's be centered, let's control ourselves, and let's take a look at this objectively
yeah,
as a almost like a third person.
yeah,
So teaching yourself to step out of that situation and observe
yeah,
from a third person, and then that actually was the biggest exercise that really helped me. And almost like, let's say if my nephew comes to me, he's like, "Hey, can you teach me how to trade the stock market?"
yeah,
And if I'm teaching him, what would I tell him?
yeah,
Right? And usually we already know the answer deep inside.
hmm,
What would we tell him?
yeah,
So we're perfectly fine telling other people what to do,
yeah,
and that's the right thing to do. But when it comes to ourselves, we don't do it. So I think that journey, I mean, I tell people trading was the biggest personal development journey I've ever embarked on
yeah,
because it will bring the best out in you. It'll also bring the worst out in you. And I think it's also good to see both sides of you. So
yeah.
realize, okay, you do have a dark side. The key is just to choose, the light over the darkness. And I think that's what gets you the results.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I tell people the thought pattern is when you learn to master your thoughts, if you will, um, is when you begin to discipline yourself. Because, of course, everything comes with a thought. Let me go hang out with the guys. Let me do this. Let me do that. But when you start mastering your thoughts, controlling it, saying thus and thus, and usually it's a form of meditation, I tell people, where you are able to make that decision because you actually slow down your thoughts and give you an opportunity to now choose versus where you're just reacting off of it. So here you are, and you're applying the all the tools that you learn in NLP. I was trained in it as well, and I was in the corporate America scene, and yeah, it assisted me a lot dealing with people, especially also when I got in my staff and all the different things. And in corporate, as you get up there, it's a powerful tool. So here you are, you're learning all of these advantages as far as finances and seeing the different things. When you began to move forward, when you were looking at yourself and you say, how did you start to plan? Well, how did you started looking and saying, I want to be here. I want to, how did you begin to start putting those pieces together as you're moving through your life? You're growing now, you're a young man, and, you have other things that you're trying to achieve. What were some of those as you're moving forward, and how did you approach them?
I think one of the biggest things that I did is just, and I always talk about it as well, is like humble yourself,
Yeah,
right? Like take the ego out of the way. You don't have all the answers.
yeah,
Nobody does, right? But somebody might have the answer you're looking for. So first is coming from a place of always being a perpetual student. You're a student for life.
hmm,
You're a lifelong learner, and humbling yourself enough to surround yourself with people and asking for help. So the biggest I attribute my success to the people around me.
yeah,
I surrounded myself with great coaches, mentors, people that I would just take out for lunches or coffees just to see, hey,
yeah,
could you help me out this? Where do you think I'm going wrong? Anytime I meet somebody for a consult, the first thing I ask them is never about like, what I should do or anything.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if you were in my position, what's something that I need to avoid looking out
Yeah.
for? In this path of my journey of my success, what do I need to look out for? What do I need to avoid? And those things really help me asking those questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I always surrounded myself with people older than I am,
Yeah.
right? This is what really good thing I learned from the gentleman in London. It was like, I think 70, 80 years old. And I took him out for dinner and I was asking a bunch of questions. And he said one thing that always stuck with me. It's like, he said, return on investment is more important than return on equity,
Yeah.
and return on ego,
Yeah.
right? So return on investment more important than return on ego. So anytime you're doing anything in business, are you doing it to invest in the people? Are you doing it to add value, or are you doing it for your own self glorification or your own ego?
Yeah.
And I think that really struck with me. So anytime I'm coaching people, I look at it from that lens. What value am I adding, or am I just doing it for an ego? So I think humbling yourself to realize you don't have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Surround yourself with people. Be willing to ask for help, right? And be willing to just say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Could you help me out? I think it takes a lot of courage to say that, even especially when you're successful.
Oh yeah.
When you're not successful, it's easier. But let's say when you are successful, but you're not living your full potential, then it's just, you got to humble yourself. It's okay. What am I doing wrong here?
Yeah.
Right. And it takes a lot of courage as a man to say that to
Yeah.
another man.
I hope you guys that are listening heard what he just said. It is possibly the key to success. Everything he just said is the key to success. And I know you guys have heard it so many times. You hear people say, "Be very careful who you surround yourself with," and that's for everything. And when you go into business, we talk about modeling. It is one of the most powerful tools available. And the fact that you're bringing all the different, and I love hanging out with older folks because what they do is they have a deeper perspective. They've gone through the stuff, if you will, they've gone through and they are further on in the journey. And that's how I used to talk to my sons. I'm like, hey guys, life is basically this. I started my journey a little earlier than you, and I have accumulated a couple of stuff from hanging out with other people that I've seen. And I am simply here as a computer, a database that you can extract information from to assist you with your stuff. That's all it is. And so I used to surround myself the same. I had all these guys around me that was in the business. I had some folks that had retired from the business, all that type stuff, so that I can plug into them at any time to, and always, as you stated, and I hope you guys heard it, always stay humble. You've got to stay humble. If you don't, you'll lose it. You'll fail, you'll burn out and you'll fail because you have to understand the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing. It was said is that you have to bring value to others. And it is very important that you go on your journey, your individual journey. But after you are walking through your journey, the independence, you have to realize that we also need to be interdependent. And that's how we started assisting people. So here you are businessman. And how did you started to enact and interact with employees and stuff like that? Those that were struggling, because we all have those that are going through. And how do you uh, bring them up? How do you talk to them and engage with them to help them understand that all is well, if you will?
Yeah, it's coming from a place of like collaboration.
Yeah.
So I never look at my employees like they're working for
Yeah.
me, or I'm their boss or anything like that. It's, we're collaborating, we're on a project, we're on a mission,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's got a part and a role to play in that mission and that vision. And it's a very collaborative approach. They can call me anytime, they can message me anytime. It's very open door,
Yeah.
the way we do it. And at the same time, anytime we do a team meeting, it first starts off with, okay, what went great today?
Yeah.
Right? What are we grateful for today? So we start the meeting on a good note before jumping into the work.
Yeah.
And then we talk, okay, who needs help with something right now? And then we let him speak. So I think that's how the first 10 minutes, where a lot of people in their business just jump straight to work.
Yeah.
We're talking about who needs help right now. right? Who's going through something? Let's talk about it. How can we help you first? So first, it starts on that approach. That gets the meeting off on a good foot. They know that you're on their corner.
Yeah.
They know that you got their back. Now, if you got their back, they will also have your back,
Yeah.
right? They will do what needs to be done for the business. So I think it all starts from there, and not doing it from the sense of like a strategy that you're trying to do this, but doing it actually because you mean it,
Yeah.
right? Doing because that's how place you're coming from, and that shows. They can see right through it.
Oh yeah.
Your
Oh
employees
yeah.
are not. They're not. Somebody who's just gonna make up stuff and they're
Yeah.
not gonna see through it. People see
Oh
through it.
yeah.
Your energy aura that stands out, see through it, and I think if it comes from a place of honesty, like you're really trying to help them get to know them,
Mhm.
I think that's how everything starts.
Yeah, I always mention that we are team members. I Each one has a position. I hated the term boss. Never liked it at all.
Mhm.
I made sure that no one called me that because I think what it does, it sets up a mentality, a perception, and that one is over the other. And when you look at it, at individual as team members, it creates also a perception. And so I believe it, just like you get more done. You get the team becomes a lot more proactive, and I think creativity flows in a situation like that versus boss employee kind of a relationship. So here you are, you achieved all this. Now, how did you where did thought of putting books together and coaching and all that stuff, how did you navigate to there? And how did the book came about, if you will, or the thought of the book and then sitting down and putting it together?
I never meant to like write a book. It was
Yeah.
more like notes for myself.
Yeah.
So I wrote it as like notes for myself, to myself. Here's the things that I need to do
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
my own life to achieve the success that I want. So I took, I attended a lot of workshops, seminars,
Yeah.
hired a lot of coaches, mentors, went to a lot of spiritual retreats, and I gathered everything that I learned
Hmm.
in my personal development journey into these pages as notes to myself.
Yeah.
And then, one day, a couple of my friends came over, they glanced at these notes and they're like, this is actually really good, man. Like I could start applying it. This is actually really good. You should turn it into a book.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of when I turned it into a book. And then since then, it just took a life of its own. I mean, people have been talking about it, spreading it. Amazon's have great reviews on it.
Yeah.
And it really was just, here's the things that I need to do.
Hmm.
Because I realized that, I was fortunate enough to be successful monetarily
Yeah.
that I could invest all those resources, attending workshops, seminars, hiring coaches,
Yeah.
hiring mentors, right? And I spent a lot of time, right? Because financial markets, you do the work for like 2-3 hours a day, and the rest of the day you have off.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of time to read. I had a lot of time to go to retreats and learn more about myself. But I do realize that other people perhaps do not have the ability to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars like I did.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have the time. They're already doing 9 to 5. They're really busy. They don't have time to sit and learn a little bit more. So I thought, what can I do that I can distill everything that I've learned after spending hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
dollars into here's 10 things we need to do. Like the common themes between everything.
Yeah.
Like if you study any spiritual book, any religious text from back in the day,
Yeah.
what's the common themes? Like that's what I really tried to figure out. What's the biggest needle movers that if we just do these 10 things, it'll really move the quality of our life? And that's when I just got an idea,
Hmm.
and I spoke it first.
Yeah.
I recorded it, just audio. I just started talking,
Yeah.
right? I started talking. That's how it came about, because English is not really my first
Yeah.
language, and I'm not a great writer. So I just recorded my book in audio just to myself.
Hmm.
Here's what I need to do. Here's what I need to do. Then finally getting an editor, and then turning that over into the book that we have now. And it's great to see that people are just applying that, and they're saying this is great.
Yeah, that is great, man. That's awesome. I love the stories of how those books and different things are created, because in many cases, most of us, we never thought we'd ever be a writer or anything like that. That's not
Yeah,
something we focus on, and then the next thing you know, we are called a published author. So it's really interesting.
right.
So talk to me. I want you to talk to us a little about because I know you started your personal growth journey at a pretty young age, at 13, and getting exposed to some of the NLP and those type guys. When you were going through some of your development, what were some of the things that you noticed about you that you needed to correct, if you will, for lack of a better terminology, what were some of those emotions that you saw as you were excavating and digging and looking at yourself that you said, hey, I need to work on this?
Yeah, I always felt like you can always get better.
Yeah.
You can always improve, right? It's a lifelong process. It's not like you get there and you know everything. And to me, I never, took to watching like TV or movies. I was more always into like
Yeah.
documentaries, researching like actual stuff. I never read fiction. I was
Yeah.
always nonfiction kind of a person. And I think a lot of that came from I had to develop my communication skills
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, I was really shy. I was
Yeah.
very quiet. I would not add anything to the conversation. I'd be the person just sitting there in a group and
Yeah.
not saying a lot of things. So I knew that I needed to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm ever going to be successful in business, I need to learn how to talk. I need to
Yeah.
learn how to communicate. So that was one of the things that I focused on. And then how can I, if I'm going to cause any impact, how can I influence people? Right. So I wanted to learn about that. How can I move people?
Mm-hmm.
And then how can I move myself?
Yeah.
Because I was, in my own mind, a victim mindset,
Yeah.
right? Oh, this is how it is.
Yeah.
Or you start going down on yourself. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, this life is, very tricky or tough. And then you're looking at it. You're like, but you can change it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's you can change it anytime you want. So I would just wanted to learn how
Yeah.
can I change it?
Yeah.
What tools do I need? Right? Whether it be communication, whether it be influence, whether it be health, whether it be just more overall self-esteem, self-confidence.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of those type of things is what I kind of got into very early on with the what Carol Dweck talks about now,
Yeah.
growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Like always thinking about what you can do rather than what happened.
Yeah.
What happened has happened. What are you going to do about it is the biggest thing.
Yeah. I tell people the um, the genesis of all of anything is the thoughts. How are you, and when you're going through the those points when you're looking, and the you talked about when you're looking at the less than thoughts. So it's my color, it's race, all of these different things. The genesis of that, what you just spoke, is a thought, and you took it, and then it became you, and you said it. And so I always tell them, you have to learn how to rewire your thoughts, how to begin to not take and allow certain thoughts in, and start allowing, what do you want? I would ask some people. And I would tell them a story that I remember because I grew up in a church. Jesus is walking by, and this man is at a pool, and Jesus walks up to him and says, "What do you want? What are you doing here?" He's like, "Well, every couple of years, angel come tap the water, and I'm trying to get in there." And Jesus looks at him and says, uh, "Do you want to be healed?" And he looked at them and says, "Of course I do." you know. So why did he ask him that question? He wanted to locate him. Are you satisfied where you're at? All right, did you? What is your thought about where you're at, your condition? And but the man says, and that's what I tell people: those questions are designed to clarify your thought, so that you can now enunciate what you want specifically. He says, "I want to be healed." And Jesus said, "Get up and walk." So that's the same process. We have to locate ourselves, and we do that as we bring information, begin to ask the questions as we're seeking to grow and move forward. We have to ask those questions because it locates us, and then we're able to bring in the additional information necessary so that we can walk through it. And so that's why I always tell people, the genesis of where you're living and all your things that have gone through is that thought. How do you learn to manage it and make it into something to start create your life? So here you are, you're preparing for success. Your book that you have, and you're also a coach. I want you to invite us to tell people, I love these type stories. And I tell them all the time, that the only servants can get to see this, a front seat, if you will, when someone is transitioning from that old um, perception, that old thinking belief system, and you ask a question because you know the type and the right question to ask them, because you know already the outcome, because you've located them before. And when they make that transition over, how, what a honorable, humble place to be. And so I always like to hear, as you know, a couple stories out about that, because it is truly um, a humbling place, but it's something that will always make you excited as to, I want more of that. I want to see more of that, where people are transitioning from one to another. Invite us to one of those.
Yeah, I think honesty, right? Like being honest with yourself.
Yeah,
So a lot of times, we do things in life that you think that's the right thing to do,
yeah,
or or you maybe even know that that's not the right thing to do, but you do it anyway. You go through that path. So for me, I think a lot of that, especially when I even came to New York
yeah,
and I attained that financial success, but then the questions that I had to ask myself is, okay, I'm really happy. Is that really what I envisioned?
yeah,
Is that what I wanted? And I think you be really honest with yourself to realize, okay, maybe there's other aspects of my life that maybe I'm not successful at.
yeah,
Right? You could be financially successful, but if your health is a mess, are you really successful?
yeah,
Right? Or if you're financially successful, but you can't even get along with people, your relationships are a mess. Is that really
yeah.
success? So then my definition of success evolved over time because of those things,
Hmm.
right? First it was financial success,
Yeah,
right? But then it's like, okay, I need to work on my health, and then it's okay, I need to work on my relationships.
yeah,
So then you realize that it's you got to create harmony, and that's one of the things that I realized the last few years, even till now. I'm like, okay, you have to dedicate focus, because your energy will flow where attention goes. So you got to
yeah,
focus on the things that you want, but then not neglect all the other areas,
yeah,
because you won't feel satisfied, you won't feel happy with it. So I think creating harmony between all of those areas, where health, wealth, love, happiness, right, creating all of that together, that's what's going to get me the results. So I think I'm still on that journey
yeah.
now. I never tell people, okay, I am there. It's never a
You'll never
destination.
get there,
It's
man.
a constant journey.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I.
it's a constant journey. You're going to be on a lifelong, and if you're going to be on a lifelong journey, then, well, do it the best of your
Yeah.
ability. Always try to learn more about it.
Mhm.
What else are you going to do the rest of your
Yeah,
life, right?
it is. I try to bring the information to folks, and I tell them, you are that deep of an individual that it will take you this lifetime for you to even touch the surface. And I want to touch deeper and deeper, and so that's why I'm always asking those questions. When I something happened and I respond a certain way, I would pause and say, where did that come from? What was that? What was the source? And then began to identify it, and then bring some light to it, as you said, and deal with it and move on. Because um, I want to grow, man. I want to just every opportunity I get to learn more about me is really fascinating. Because I look at myself a couple of weeks ago, and look back and go, "Wow, you've made some strides, man." So I love the learning process. On the onset of our conversation, you had mentioned something, and I wanted to go back to that: integrity. What, because that was one of the hallmarks that you had used all the way through. And when someone says to you integrity, and when you're conveying that to someone as one of someone you're trying to relate to, what does that look like to you when you're conveying that to someone?
Yeah, so I think first, it's the my definition of success is like, integrity is doing what you said you're going to do,
Yeah,
right? And then doing it when you said you're going to do it.
yeah,
I mean, just think about how much our quality of lives would be different if we did every single thing we said we're going to do, and we did it when we said we're going to do it.
yeah,
And I think that, like, living consciously from your word, like your word means a lot. So really being conscious of the words that you're using and that are coming out of your mouth. So make sure you really mean it.
yeah,
So an example of that is people would say, but I'm a person of integrity. I'm like, really? When's the last time somebody called you and you said, hey, I'm just busy in the middle of something, let me call you back? And then you never did.
yeah,
Or maybe you ran into an old friend in a mall or airport, and you're like, hey, good to see you, been a long time, we should catch up. And then you make no effort to follow up with them or catch up with them,
yeah,
right? So you're saying things that you said you're going to do. Like, for example, health. I'm going to start working out from Monday.
Yeah.
Right. And then comes Monday, and then, you don't do it. Now it's the 28th of the month.
Yeah.
So I'll just start from the 1st. Right. And then we're in December. We'll just start from January
Yeah.
1st. And we keep procrastinating.
Yeah.
Right. Because that we're living in lack of integrity. We don't believe in our own word.
Yeah.
So if you don't believe in your own word, how do you expect the universe to believe in you?
Yeah.
Right? How do you expect your clients to believe in? How do you expect customers to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself? So I think when we have those breaks in integrity, when we're not following through on the things that we said we're going to do, then that is what leads into low self-esteem,
Yeah.
because your unconscious is like, well, he doesn't believe in his own word.
Yeah.
He's just going to say a thing, he doesn't do it. And then slowly that'll creep into your brain. You'll start becoming, low self-esteem, low self-confidence, because inside, you don't mean it,
Yeah.
right? You just, those are just words.
Yeah.
So I think living true to your word is integrity, right? Do what you said you're going to do, and then do it when you said you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And when you notice that there's a break in integrity, rather than apologizing for it, say, oh, I'm not going to do it again, or yeah, I'm definitely going to do it tomorrow. No, you put things in place
Yeah.
to ensure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that's taking action.
Yeah. It takes, you have to have that in personal development. It is one of the hallmarks, because if you don't believe you, how are you going to get anywhere? And so one must become honorable to yourself and have an integrity with yourself in order so that you can have an integrity with anyone else. And so it's an absolute powerful explanation. I love how you do it. And all you guys that have been listening to us, man, as far as the financial piece, I know some of you young ones and old ones that are out there. Here is a gentleman that has been through. He started when he was pretty young. He has learned certain things, if you will. We call that wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And he's known how to move through the arena when it comes to the finances and entrepreneurship and relationship, all of those things, relationship to self, communication. You heard him talk about all of that. And he has all of this information housed within him. And you guys, I've talked to you guys about books already. When a book is the author's words that once you read it and you hear what he's saying, he or she, those words have the ability to leap from those pages straight inside of you and change your life. Because why do I say that? Because that has happened to me many, many times. And I've told you guys, it's cheap. A lot of people pay a couple $1,000s to go before a coach and all these type of stuff, $10,000, $20,000. When you have people that have gone through, and it's the book of a price of a book where you can sit down and really get a chance to have your coffee and your tea and whatever, and put your focus in the words. I guarantee you're having a private time with that author, and it can change your life. I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment, man. This has been pretty good. I love it.
No, thanks for having me. It was really good chatting with you. Very
Yeah,
different conversation, and enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love picking your brain, man. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.